Namo Buddhaya, and today my talk is on the four patron kings of Buddhism. I think not many people have realized that the Buddha Buddhism has patron kings. All right, I'm going to talk about Bimbisara, Pasenadi, Ashoka, and Kanishka. First, the timeline, so that we have a sense of at what time, when did they live. You see, King Bimbisara, Pasenadi, and the Buddha lived about the same time, during the same period. That was about 500 to 600 before the Common Era, right? And after that, Alexander the Great came about 100 years after the Buddha. With Alexander the Great came the Greeks. And also the Greeks became Buddhists. Some of them became Buddhists, and they actually influenced the development of Buddhism. The Greeks, yeah? So that's quite interesting. And after Alexander the Great was Chandragupta. He was the one who started the Mauryan dynasty that was based actually from Magadha kingdom. The kingdom of King Bimbisara later on grew into a big kingdom. And Chandragupta was the grandpa for Ashoka. And Ashoka was the king that controlled a huge part of India, Pakistan, and the northern part of India, right? Then after that, Ashoka played a very key role in bringing Buddhism into the world, to the rest of the world, so it became an international religion. Then in the Common Era is using the Western calendar, using Christ as after the birth of Christ, around before 100, they call it the Common Era, right up to about 100. That is the time of King Kanishka. King Kanishka was the one, during his time, Buddhism went to China. So that's how we receive the heritage, Buddhist heritage, because of King Kanishka. But very often not spoken in Buddhist Theravada tradition, because he was a great promoter of Mahayana Buddhism. Yeah? Although he was Buddhism, there was early Buddhism, but Mahayana Buddhism flowered during his reign. Now let's just go back to the Buddha's time. During the Buddha's time, there were several kingdoms, but there were two powerful kingdoms. And this was along the Gangetic plain, that is the river Ganges, and all vying for power. They were trying to expand the empire, which later on became the Mauryan dynasty, huge empire. First, you have the kingdom of Magadha. Magadha, capital was Rajagaha, the abode of kings, Rajagaha. Later on, the capital moved to Pataliputra, right? So Pataliputra is along the Ganges River. Rajagaha is surrounded by hills. And if you build walls in between the hills, it becomes a fortified city. So you can defend against invaders. And this was ruled by King Bimbisara and later his son Ajatasattu. And then later on, further west is the kingdom of Kosala. The capital of Kosala is Savatthi. And Savatthi is where Jetavana Grove is. The king there, his name is Pasenadi. And later on, and it was later ruled by his son Vedudaka. Unfortunately, both kings has terrible sons, and they both, was responsible for the death of their fathers. There were other kingdoms, for instance, Vamsas and Avanti. This is mentioned in the Pali scriptures. All right, so you can imagine two powerful kingdoms vying for power, but they were also linked through marriage. Okay, so this is how it looks like. Can you see the river Ganges? Many tributaries feeding into Ganges. And let me see. Okay. Rajagaha is here. Very close to Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha gained enlightenment. And above, just about 8 miles from Rajagaha is Nalanda, right? And then Savatthi is here. Savatthi or Kosala kingdom, huge. And Kapilavastu is close to Savatthi. And they're almost like a vassal state of Kosala, right? And this is where the Buddha was born, and Lumbini is close by. All right, and these are some Magadha is a big kingdom. Kosala is another big kingdom. The Sakyas is around Kapilavastu. The Vajrayans, it is a republic like Negeri Sembilan. They take turns to choose the head of their rulers. You know, they go in some kind of same way that we do for Negeri Sembilan. They just choose a head and they rotate. Okay, and River Ganges flowed into the Bay of Bengal, and that's Calcutta. First, let's go to the King Bimbisara of Magadha. Yeah, King Bimbisara, C means that not really sure. Unlike the Chinese, which goes by the horoscope and all that, and they could actually determine the timeline when a king was born and all that. The Chinese very precise about the dates. The Indians are less precise, so they just use C. C means about, around. Yeah. So this is BCE, which we have to go the opposite way, 545 to about 493. He was a king of Magadha, and they established imperial dominance in the Indian subcontinent. He ruled at the time of Gautama the Buddha. Almost Gautama the Buddha is about 563 to 483, right? At the same time, during the Buddhist time, there was another religious teacher by the name of Mahavira. Mahavira was the leader of the Jains. So this was two competing religious traditions. They call from the Shramana tradition. That's people who actually renounce and go on alms food and all that, and they don't belong to the Brahmana. There are two traditions, the Brahmana tradition and the Shramana tradition. Buddhism and Jainism come from the Shramana tradition. And King Bimbisara supported both religious teachers. So he expanded his kingdom to Anga at the Bay of Bengal and made Ajatasattu as the governor of Anga. Ajatasattu's mother was a sister of Pasenadi. So the king married each other's sisters, and Bimbisara, because he married the sister of Pasenadi, Pasenadi used to control Benares, or they call it Kashi, and that was given as dowry to King Bimbisara. All right. So the capital for the Magadha is Rajagaha, home of the royalty, and this remained as a capital up to the 5th century BCE. So you go for pilgrimage, this is the first city that you go to after Bodh Gaya, Rajagaha. Right? It's surrounded by 5 hills, and therefore becoming almost like a natural fortification. And as I mentioned, that during Bimbisara's time and also Ajatasattu, they extended the walls that connected, so the whole city is surrounded by hills or by walls, and so very defensible. Because if you go to the Gangetic Plains, it's really flat, very flat, and very unusual to find hills coming up as outcrops surrounding the city. Yeah. So Bimbisara's son Ajatasattu covered the gaps with stone walls, so Rajagaha became a walled city. But Ajatasattu's son, Udayin, was not happy with Rajagaha. He decided to move it to Pataliputra, at that time called Pataligama, which is like a village. From the village became Pataliputra, later on the capital of Ashoka, and later on today it's called Patna. So Patna is built on a very old city, right up to the Buddha's time. And this became the capital of King Ashoka, who came about 200 years later. Ashoka built a huge, beautiful capital. And some Greek chronicle says that this city the walls are so enormous that it's probably built by angels, almost beyond what human beings can do. So there was marriage in order to, like the way in China they used to do, unfortunately princesses and you don't marry out of love, okay? You marry because of alliance, because it's good for the kingdom, all right? So King Bimbisara married the sister of King Pasenadi of Koshana, and her name is Chelana. Oh, sorry. King Bimbisara has another wife. Her name is Chelana. I'm always mistaken. This is Lichavi's princess. Lichavi is the republic. All right. So from this mother Chelana, you got Ajatasattu, the son that later on killed the father. So Magadha was prosperous. He received Kashi, which is Benares, as dowry for marrying King Pasenadi's sister. All right? And meanwhile, it is rich in minerals, iron ores, and timber. And of course, the Gangetic Plains was fertile. So you can imagine that the kingdom was prosperous, agriculture was good, they have minerals, they've got iron ore that can make weapons. Magadha also, because this is prosperous, and they also supported religious traditions. There were many other religions other than Brahminism. For instance, Buddhism, Jainism, some others. And so they were, the Sramanas were looked down by the high caste Hindu Brahmins. So there was some kind of tension. But at that time, Hinduism or Brahminism was not so strong. So that is how Shramana can actually compete. But later on, Brahmana became more powerful. Okay, there was this story about how King Bibisara became a king at the age of 15, and he ruled for 52 years. Very long for a king. For any king, it's very long. Because if you're in a position of power, there are always people trying to unseat you or to kill you or get rid of you, poison you. Many things can happen. In China, they have an army of food tasters. So before the food is being served, before the emperor, food tasters. Food tasters, so they enjoy the emperor's food. If they die out of poisoning, the emperor will keep away from that dish. So their first line of defense. So to rule for 52 years is fantastic. And apparently, this is one of the stories that came around that Gautama, the Buddha, renounced home at the age of 29 and looking for teachers. So obviously they gravitate towards Ganges. And he was passing through this kingdom of Rajagaha. And he was very princely, the way he carried himself. And apparently the King Bimbisara was so impressed with his bearing, saw him from far away, and later on invited the Buddha to be. And even making an offer of half his kingdom, saying that, why don't we be joint rulers? I do not know who would do that. Like you will see somebody who's really very princely, invite him in the house and they can stay, you take half my house. Not so easy. So yeah, King Bibisara offered half his kingdom to ascetic Gautama, but the Buddha to be turned down. He says, no, I've still not found the truth. But I promise that after finding the truth, I'll come back and you'll be the first for me to transmit the teachings, which the Buddha did. So that was the first encounter when, and of course the Buddha to be, there was supposed to be a big sacrifice ceremony where animals are supposed to be slaughtered. This is part of the tradition then, and the Buddha to be stopped out of compassion for the animals, and so the king was really moved by this, and the king banned animal sacrifice after that. All right, so this was one of the stories. Okay, so after the Buddha gained enlightenment at Buddha Gaya, he spent 7 weeks in Buddha Gaya, and then after that he went to Saranath to teach the 5 monks, and the 5 monks were later on joined by 55 other monks. They got ordained, Yasa and his 54 friends, so there were about 60 monks. After the rain season over, like this kind of period, during the rain season, the monks go in different directions. And the Buddha went back to very close to where he got enlightened and converted fire worshippers. There were 3 brothers, and they had altogether 1,000 followers among them. They have their hair, matted hair, and they worship fire. So they were fire worshippers, and the Buddha subdued them by showing that he's got more power. He was being able to suppress, One of them, they had this chamber where there is, at night, where they maintain the fire, at night a serpent will come in. So whoever sleeps in the chamber will be killed by the serpent. So the Buddha went to the brothers and asked permission to stay in the chamber. So they said, oh, this young, fine-looking man, a monk, will surely die. Next day he was still there, and the serpent was completely subdued. And it went on like that. Then eventually, the 3 Kashyapa brothers became convinced that the Buddha was more powerful and was enlightened. and they became his disciples. So can you imagine the Buddha walking with 1,000 disciples approaching the kingdom of Rajagaha, because he had a promise to the king, and he came on the outskirts of Rajagaha, and when King Bimbisara heard that the Buddha is coming with 1,000 monks, he decided with his entire court, riding out to meet up with the Buddha. And I think they have done research. Now they have identified as Jatian village, which is walking distance, about 14 kilometers from the city of Rajagaha. I remember that when I was in India, they had an opening ceremony of the Jatian walk. Through research, they found the passage. And I was pushed on the stage, and I was sitting on the stage very comfortably. Then they asked me to make a speech. So I had to make a speech, So you have to be very, you have to be on your toes when you attend Indian events. So there were the Kashyapa brothers. The king Bimbisara didn't know who the head was, because the Buddha was only 35 years old. And the Kashyapa brothers were very well known, And so the Kashyapa, the Uruvela Kashyapa, the elders of the brother, bowed before the Buddha and said that the Buddha was the teacher. And so King Bimbisara also, accepted the Buddha. So Uruvela Kashyapa also explained why he abandoned the fire sacrifice, and if in order for him to experience Nibbana. So King Bimbisara, when he heard this, he was very, very happy. He said that when he became king, or before he became king, he had 5 wishes when he was still a prince. The first wish is that he would be king one day, which happened. And then a fully enlightened one would visit my country, second wish. Third wish, he would associate with the Buddha. Fourth wish, that the Buddha will teach him the doctrine. And fifth wish, that he will understand the doctrine. So when King Bimbisara met up with the Buddha taught, and King Bimbisara's mind is like a bulb appearing, ping. So he, all his wishes are fulfilled now. All right, and so as a result of which, King Bimbisara offered the bamboo grove. It's called Veluvana, known as the sacred sanctuary for squirrels. So sometimes in the sutras you might see sanctuary of squirrels. It means the Veluvana. It used to be a grove of bamboos, and the bamboos used to be huge. And it used to be huge, quite a big area. But now, because of the growth of the city of Rajagaha, the bamboo grove has become much smaller. This was ideal because there are certain conditions for any place to be a retreat center. So when the Buddha arrived in Rajagaha, the king wanted to be the host for the Buddha. But then he had to see which place might be suitable to accommodate 1,000 monks. And so he considered the Veluvana, and the conditions of Veluvana, it was really ideal because the Buddhas would like a retreat center that's not too close or too far away from a village. If it's too close from a village, village is very noisy and people moving around, so not suitable for retreat. Too far away, people cannot come and support and do dana and all that. Okay, so not too near, not too far. It must be easy access for devotees, not too crowded during the day, like in the city, lots of people, and free from noise at night. So it becomes very quiet, Veluvana. And they must have fresh air and suitable for solitude. So these conditions are met at Veluvana. And the Buddha spent initially 3 rainy seasons, and later on, during his mission, he spent another 3 rainy seasons at Veluvana. And in Veluvana, you got this water tank. Apparently, this water tank existed even during the Buddha's time. So you can imagine the Buddha and the monks using this water to wash and all. Yeah? The water tank is there. Now, Veluvana is done up fairly nicely. Every time when we go to India, we see, oh, this place has improved. Huh? And also the Thais have been very generous in donating they have now do landscaping of this place in Veluvana. But when we were there, sometimes you can hear music. Because in India they play music very loudly on loudspeakers. So no longer the quiet sanctuary that the King Bimbisara gave to the Buddha. So Veluvana is just next to the city of Rajagaha. But further on in one of the hills, it's called the Vulture's Peak. So it's a hill, Vajra Peak. It rises above the city noise and bustle. And so there was a monastery there. And this is one of our favorite places. When we go for a pilgrimage, we go there before daybreak, before dawn, in the darkness with some torchlight. And then we trek up the mountain. And as we reach to the top of the hill, suddenly the sun rises above the horizon. And it's so beautiful, covered with light mist. And so peaceful. So we go there and do some meditation, do some chanting before anybody else. So you like to be the earliest. That's where we sit down and do meditation. And this is a favorite place of the Buddha because of the quietness. And this Vajra is very frequently mentioned in the Buddhist sutras, one of which is the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. This is the sutra that talks about the last 3 months of the Buddha's life. But in the Mahayana Sanskrit Sutra, Vajra becomes a favorite. Many of the sutras are said to be preached from the Vajra. For instance, Lotus Sutra, Surangama Sutta, and many Prashna Paramita Suttas, Sanskrit sutras, attributed to Vajra. Buddha was supposed to talk. So this hill, Vajra, is very significant for practitioners of the Sanskrit tradition. Yeah? Yes. Unfortunately, King Bimbisara had a very ambitious son. Yeah. King Bimbisara was actually very generous to Ajatasattu. Because when his mother, Ajatasattu's mother, was pregnant, the soothsayer, the weapons in the palace was flashing. And so the fortune tellers predicted that the baby that would be born will later on kill the father. And but the King Bimbisara refused to allow abortion. And so raised the son Ajatasattu, who was very ambitious. Father ruled for 52 years, so you can imagine this young man waiting to take over the throne. You know, fortunately in England you didn't have a prince like him. He waited for the mother. In Ajatasattu he was very impatient. But the worst thing that he was under the influence of Devadatta, who was the Buddha's cousin, but also very ambitious because the Buddha was being admired and had many devotees and well supported. So he wanted to take the position of the Buddha. So he told Buddha, "Oh Buddha, why don't you retire and let me become the head of the Sangha?" And the Buddha has to refuse him. So he was very disappointed. And then he turned against the Buddha out of jealousy, because when you have a cousin who always outstrip you, who is better than you, everything, well, sure, get jealous already. So he was jealous. And so he had a pact of Ajatasattu. So his pact was that Devadatta says, "I'll kill the Buddha and you kill your father." He says, these days people live very long life. You know, you should not wait until your father passes away. You should take over the throne. So Ajatasattu at first tried to creep into the bedroom of King Bimbisara with a knife, with a dagger. But he was caught. And according to the tradition of the land, he's supposed to be punished by death. He's supposed to be killed. Then another punishment that you can do is to banish him to a far-off area so he cannot give trouble. But King Bimbisara have a different idea, despite the advice from his advisors. He says that, I've been on this throne for a long time. I'd like to turn my life into a spiritual life. Let the son take over. So he stepped down. He abdicated in favor of the Ajatasattu. And so that was a big mistake, because Ajatasattu already had an idea to get rid of the father. So he imprisoned the father. And those who have gone for the pilgrimage knew that there was a prison with a window facing Vajra. So King Bimbisara said, "It's okay if you imprison me, provided I have a window, I can look at Vajra where the Buddha is." And then after that, deprive the father of food, starve him to death. But father still didn't die, because the mother was allowed to go and see the father. So she was smuggling food in the hair, they caught her. And the last thing she did was put honey and milk on the skin, so the father could get nourishment from just by taking it from her skin. That also they caught. So mother was banned. And his father still didn't die. So Ajatasattu was not happy. So he sent a barber. So when the barber came, her father's beard have all grown, hair have grown long. So he said, "Oh, my son has a change of heart. He's now sending the barber to shave my beard, cut my hair." Actually, the Baba did something else. They had built a fire with burning charcoal, cut off the soles of his head and made him to walk on the coals. Yeah. So that was what he was tasked to do. At the same time, according to the story, Ajatasattu's he's got a wife, and the wife has just given birth. So he was so excited when he held the little baby, the son, in his arms. And while holding the son in his arms, a thought occurred to him whether his father had the same feeling, the fatherly feeling of holding him when there's a baby. So he went and checked with the mother, and the mother gave him a good shelling. Say, what do you mean? And listed all the things that the father did for him. And at that time, he felt, wow, I sent a Baba to kill my father. He tried to stop, but that time it was already too late. The father has already died. So there was a sad ending for Bimbisara. But if you say, oh, how can a disciple of the Buddha like that? Actually, in the previous life, Bimbisara's previous life, he killed Ajatasattu. So they take revenge one after the other. Unsettled business continue in the next life. So, Ajatasattu himself was succeeded by his son Udaya, and the same thing, Udaya killed Ajatasattu. And this goes on by apparently 7 generations, son killing father. Quite terrible, huh? There's a lucky not born in a royalty. Okay, so legacy of Bimbisara, that he was the one who united the Magadha kingdom, the empire, and laid the foundation for future kings to unite the entire subcontinent. So this is the place where Chandragupta and later Ashoka, on the base of the Magadha, they have a policy of religious tolerance. Actually, this is part of Indian tradition. They're very open to, they like this different teachings. Okay for the Indians. They don't go to war because you have a different beliefs, huh? And they encourage arts and crafts. So this was what was being supported by Bimbisara, and is highly spoken of in both Buddhist as well as Jain sources, and established a solid foundation for administration and trade in his kingdom. So that was Bimbisara, a wonderful king, wonderful king. And now let's move westwards to Kosala, to the kingdom of Kosala, where the king himself is Pasenadi. Again, don't have a good ending. So he was another royal patron of the Buddha. He's sometimes in Sanskrit is called Prasenajit. It's also the same as Pasenadi. Yeah? And the capital is Savatthi. These days Savatthi is no longer a prosperous city. I think somehow the city has actually, the center of activity has actually moved out of Savatthi. Savatthi is really 2 villages, now they call Sahit Mahit, on both sides of the river. Previously, Savatthi covers both sides of the river. Now only 2 villages. One is called Sahit, another one is called Mahit. 2 villages in the place of Savatthi that was used to be the capital of Kosala. And Pasenadi was a strong supporter and used every opportunity to listen to the Dhamma. Actually, Pasenadi is quite a funny king. His chief queen was Malika. She was only a daughter of a garland maker, but she's brilliant and beautiful. And he met her because he went fight a war they lost a war. So while he was retreating in the garden, he met up with this flower girl, a girl from the daughter of a flower maker, and fell in love with her and made her the queen. So her name is Malika, who is a strong supporter of the Buddha, very wise. So King Pasenadi always get advice from the wife. Sometimes have to be scolded by the wife because he was a bit silly. So he took another wife. This is again for alliance. This time was a Sakyan, and is the daughter of Prince Mahanama, cousin of the Buddha, in Sakya. Unfortunately, Mahanama, the mother of this daughter, was actually a servant. So Mahanama did not marry a princess. He had an affair with one of the maids, one of the servants, and had a daughter. So when Pasenadi wanted to marry a Sakyan princess, they said, okay, this girl, this baby, this girl who grew up is a Sakyan princess, and married him off to Pasenadi. Pasenadi didn't know that the mother was actually a servant girl before. and that became a problem. Became a problem. And together with this second woman, King Pasenadi had a son which is called Virudaka or Virudabba, who seized the throne, and he started fighting a war with the Sakyans because he was insulted with the Sakyans. He visited his cousins and Kapilavastu, and they don't treat him well at all, because they look down on him because his mother was a servant girl. He thought my mother was a princess and my father was a king. So when he left, he left behind a sword. And so he sent one of his servants to retrieve a sword, and they found that the place that he was sitting, they were washing with milk. And he was wondering why. And it was reported that because that's a way of cleansing the seat. And they said, oh, this is the son of a servant girl, of a slave girl. So this was reported to Virudaka when he was a young boy. He was like 9 years old or so. So he says, okay, you watch out. When I become king, I'm going to kill all of you. Which he did. He attacked the Sakyans. So you could see a lot of things happening here. Okay. Savatthi, one of the 6 largest cities in India, was a prosperous trading state center during the Buddhist time. And this lasted for 1,000 years. Currently, it's called Sahit Mahit, 2 villages, not a city at all. During the 25 years of the Buddhist life, the last 25 years, he spent most of his rainy seasons at Savatthi because Anathapindika offered him Jetavana Grove. So by the age of 55, every year he will go to Savatthi for his retreat, except the last one. 24 years. And in Savatthi, there are 2 retreat centers. One is Jetavana Grove, which is offered by Anathapindika, beautiful grove. We go there in the morning, we just love it. It's so beautiful, so serene. And Buddha spent his 3 months retreat with the monks for 20 rainy retreats. And then there's another retreat center in Savatthi called Pubarama. Pubarama is on the eastern side of the city, and this is offered by Vishaka. Buddha spent the first is 19 rain retreat in Jetavana Grove, and 5 rain retreat in Pubarama. So that adds up to 24. And even he's in Pubarama, if in the morning he goes for alms in Pubarama, in the afternoon he go to Jetavana Grove, and same thing, because he can actually walk to each other. And a lot of the teachings was in the Jetavana Grove. So you can imagine if you happen to take up the robes during the Buddha's time, and you say, oh, the Buddha was going to be Savatthi this year. Come, let's go and spend a retreat with the Buddha. Wouldn't you do that? I'm sure you would. 3 months, go and meditate with the Buddha, receive his teaching. But sometimes the monks make the journey because they are far, and the journey was slow. And sometimes the rain retreats already started and they cannot reach Savatthi. So you got to wait until the rain season is over to see the Buddha. Then I'm sure, very disappointed. So a lot of the teachings was given in Savatthi. And at that time, Ananda was a Buddha's attendant, and he's got a phenomenal memory. So a lot of things, he received the teachings, oral, and he's recorded. His CPU is very big. Storage is very big. I do not know how many terabytes. So he remembered the Buddha's teachings. And so a lot of the teachings was given in Jetavana Grove. And the Buddha meets up with the lay people and special teaching time for the monks, giving instructions, giving advice to the monks. At night, the devas will come. And that's how you get the Mangala Sutta. So this is in Savatthi. And Pasenadi was the Buddha's follower. Even during the early part of the Buddha's ministry, he met the Buddha when the Buddha was young, about 30-something young. So he looked at the Buddha, he said, oh, you are such a young man. How could you say that you have come to this spiritual attainment? Because there were many other practitioners that are much older than the Buddha, and they look more haggard, and their hair of metal, and some of the, so they look more saintly. So that's what Pasenadi thought. So the Buddha had to correct him. The Buddha said, please don't underestimate 4 things when they're young. Number 1, don't underestimate a warrior because they're young. Don't underestimate a prince because he's young. Don't underestimate a snake because he's young, and don't underestimate a fire. Because a warrior, he might be below 20. Alexander the Great conquered so much of the world before he was 20. Yeah? And also in China, brilliant, some generals below the age of 20 actually fought wars and won wars. A warrior. They might be young, but don't underestimate. A prince. He might be young, a prince, but he's going to be king. And he's going to wield a lot of power. A snake, small snake could be poisonous. And a fire could be small, but later on it can burn down a village. So don't underestimate. This is a way of saying to Pastor Nadir, come on. Don't just look at a person and just measure a person's spiritual attainment based on age. You know, Pastor Nadir is like that. So that's why you need Malika as a wife. And Pastor Nadir, oh, he overeats. He always, every time during lunchtime, when during the rainy season, he wants to have a conversation with the Buddha, and he walk and huff and puff and all that because overweight, eat too much. So cannot even sit properly because the stomach so much food. So the Buddha had to advise him. The Buddha says a person who is constantly mindful and he knows when there's enough food has been eaten enough food, he digests his food early and live a long life. So that's the advice of Buddha gave. Buddha says, in other words, please diet a bit, reduce your food. He overeats, especially during the season of mangoes. Oh, he loves mangoes, he eats. Oh, and the other falls sick. So he likes the Buddha's advice so much that he had an assistant. Every time before he eats, the assistant would repeat this advice, Buddha's advice. And then, therefore he reduced, his food was reduced to about half a cup. Actually, it's 1/4 of the meal that he will eat. So he reduced to about 1/4 the normal size. Later on, he became slim, and he was very proud that he became slim. Pastor Nadi. Okay, a little bit about his wife. This is the wise wife. She might be the daughter of a flower girl, but she was very wise. Yeah, and she was a devout lady, well versed in the Dharma, and guided the king several times. One day, the king was sleeping and he had 16 frightening dreams. You know, sometimes when you sleep, you get a nightmare. After waking from the nightmare, when you sleep again, the dream changed. The nightmare never continue. The king got up, sleep, the next dream come. 16 dreams in a row, all frightening dreams. Wow, horrible. So after that, what he did was that he had some advisors. They were Brahmin advisors. They told him that, this is not good. You have to do animal sacrifice and all that. So the king was planning for a huge animal sacrifice. So the queen, Malika, heard, he said, no good. Why don't you listen, ask the Buddha what the Buddha says? Because the queen knows that killing animals is not good. So he consulted the Buddha, and then the Buddha explained. And one day, the queen Malika gave birth to a daughter. King was not happy because he wanted a son. The Buddha told him, some women are better than men because they are women who are wise, virtuous, and may give birth to a valiant son who will rule a kingdom. So advise the king, don't be disappointed when you have the daughter baby. So the Buddha spoke in favor of women. And he also wants to fight war with his nephew. And because he's not happy with Ajatasattu. So the Buddha remarked, victory breeds hatred. The defeated live in pain. The peaceful live happily, giving up victory and defeat. Yeah, they advise. Unfortunately, one of his sons, Vedodapa, revolted against him in old age. And this was when the Pasenadi used to meet the Buddha during lunchtime. He took some time off, very good. Go and have a conversation with the Buddha in Jetavana Grove. What he did was he took off his crown and put at the entrance of Jetavana Grove and went in. And he's got a bodyguard. Unfortunately for the bodyguard, he killed the uncle of the bodyguard. So you get a bodyguard, you kill the uncle and you still want him as a bodyguard? Oh, come on. So when the king has gone to see the Buddha, he took the crown and brought it to Viruddhaka. And then after that, they lock up the gate. And when Pasenadi came out, he said, what happened to my crown? Where is my bodyguard? All gone. When he went to the gate is already closed, it's locked out. Oh, no more crown. So what he did was that he did I do not know whether it's a wise or foolish thing. He decided to go and ask for help for his nephew, because at that time Bimbisara already passed away. Wanted to meet the nephew, Ajatasattu, to get help. When by the time it was a long distance and it was winter, it was cold. So by the time he reached Rajagaha, I don't know how many days, city was locked. So it was cold, and he had only a servant, and he didn't even have proper food. And he was so hungry. There was some water somewhere. He went and drink the water and had a terrible way. He actually died that way. Pasenadi. And Viradaka, after sitting on the throne, decided to wage a war against the Sakyan, and actually eliminated a lot of the Sakyans. And his grandpa, Mahanama, the prince Mahanama, who fathered the Sakyan princess that married Pasenadi, had a pact with the grandson, wanted to save the Sakyans. He says that because the Sakyans are all locked up in the jail, he wanted to kill them, wanted to execute them. So he went and had a pact with Viradaka. He says, I will go to the lake and put my head under the water. As long as I can keep my head under the water, please open the gate to release the Sakyans. So Viradaka thought, well, how long can he keep his head under the water? And then the king, Viradaka agreed, and they opened the gate, and the Sakyans started escaping. But there is no sign of him appearing above the water. So the king went and find out what happened, and apparently what the grandpa did was Mahanama tied his hair onto the root of the tree and drowned. So he sacrificed himself for the Sakyans. These are the stories.
So he died outside the gates, outside the gates,
this is Pasenadi, outside the gate. He was locked out. Didn't even reach his nephew. Sad, huh? Yeah. But all this, you cannot understand it unless you understand the karma. What is beyond that in the previous life? What happened? Yeah. All right, so these are the two kings during the Buddha's time. They were patrons, they were supporters of the Buddha. Okay, good, huh? Now we will fast forward, travel through time. Buddha passed away. Alexander the Great came, then Chandragupta, and then Ashoka. Okay, now we can continue. All right. Okay, yeah. This is a story of how the Sakyans were very proud. They didn't want to marry a proper princess to Pasenadi. Only gave the baby, the girl that was being fathered by Mahanama, the prince, of course, but mother was a servant girl. And Viradaba, one day, after fighting wars, they camped on the bed of a river. India, sometimes you might see a dry river bed, but don't underestimate it. If there's a big storm, whole river gets flooded, and the whole army, the girl of Viradaba, was swept away and killed in the flood. So that's how he died, in a flood. A little bit of early Buddhism. This is the first Buddhist council. This is about Buddhist history. After the Buddha passed away, you have the first Buddhist council. 500 monk arahants got together in Rajagaha. Adesasatu after that became a Buddha's disciple after killing the father, regretted and became the Buddha's disciple. So he supported the first Buddhist council. Second Buddhist council was held in Vaishali. There were 10 points of minor points of the Vinaya, and this was the first schism that came out. So sometimes in Sanskrit scriptures you can see Staviravada. Staviravada is early Buddhism. In Pali you call it Theravada. So this is so the Theravada and Mahasangikas already there was some kind of a schism already. There was one group of monks who were very conservative. They are called the Staviravadas or the Theravadas. Another one tends to be more liberal, and they call the Mahasangikas. They're not actually Mahayanas, right? But sounds like, but they are more liberal, more open, yeah. The third one, Buddhist council, is Pataliputra. This was under Ashoka's patronage. Ashoka had a teacher, and the supported the Staviravada. And this was the time, third Buddhist council, when the Buddhist Abhidhamma, the Pali tradition was complete, where you have the seventh book, the Katavatu, yeah. So Abhidhamma was not complete in the first Buddhist council, but only in the third council that you have the final book. That's the book of controversy. So at that time, about 200 over years after the Buddha, there were many teachers, interpretation of the teaching. So there were a lot of heretical ideas. So this Katavatu tried to dismiss each of these views. So then it's from Katavatu that you know how many schools there were. There were many, I mean, they were not linked with internet and all that. no way of communication. One teacher here had one interpretation, another teacher there, another interpretation. So Katavatu tried to dismiss all this interpretation, and that became the seventh book of the Abhidhamma. And then when it comes to Fourth Buddhist Council, very interesting, there are two Fourth Buddhist Council. One was held in Kashmir, where there is an early sect of Buddhism which actually went to the northwestern part of India. The one that went south of India, south of India and Sri Lanka is called Theravada or Staviravada. The one that moved up to the northwest is called Savastivadins. Staviravada. There was Savastivadins. Savastivadins was not really fully supported by Ashoka, but they went northwest, and they became the seat for the growth of Mahayana Buddhism. And if you check early Buddhism, they call it agamas. In Pali, we call it nikayas. When you compare them together, they were very, very similar. Except sometimes there's a slight difference, and that is where scholars will say there were some additions, there were some changes. But other than that, Staviravadas and the Theravadas, actually the teachings are the same, because from the early, same source, First Buddhist Council. So in Kashmir, this was supported by Kanishka, and this is where the Savastivadins Abhidhamma was written in Sanskrit. Although Savastivadins has 7 books, the 7 books is not similar as the Pali Abhidhamma 7 books, not the same. Both have Abhidhamma, but they're actually different. Although in terms of the basic ideas, the analysis of Nama Rupa are similar, but actually it was slightly different, okay? So this became, there were also commentaries of the Abhidhamma, and this influenced the development of Mahayana Buddhism. So Mahayana Buddhism grew on the seat of Savastivadins, the early Buddhism. That also went to China, yeah. And in Sri Lanka, they also called the Fourth Buddhist Council. This is when the Tripitaka was written on Ola leaves, Aluvihara, yeah. So this is a Fourth Buddhist Council. So there are 2 Fourth Buddhist Council. From the Theravada tradition, they don't accept the one in Kashmir. That is another Buddhist tradition, Savastivadins, and also later on the growth of Mahayana happened there. So I need to speed up a bit. Ashoka the Great. A lot of stories are very well. You could see that from Magadha kingdom, look at the size. This is the reign during Ashoka's time. So it started with Chandragupta, who met up with Alexander the Great as a young man. But Alexander the Great was not impressed with Chandragupta. But Chandragupta later on grew the empire and covering India, except the southern part of India. Southern part of India very tough. You have got the Cholas and they are the ones who actually attacked Malaya and Sumatra. The Cholas, very powerful. South India. So you see the good part of India together with Bangladesh and even Pakistan. And can you see Takshila? Takshila is this Pakistan near Islamabad. Yeah. And this is the Greco-Bactrians. These are the Greeks. The Greeks are up here. Okay. This is Seleucid is the Persian Empire, and this is the full territory of Ashoka. Huge, very huge empire. So this is the largest political entity that exists. At this time, India was, you can call this actually India. Later on after Ashoka, it was fragmented into kingdom and Maharajas and all that. So they were not like one united country. Like in the case of China, after the Qing dynasty, it was one China. And then later on, it breaks up into warring states. And then it came together, Tang dynasty, Ming dynasty, and they're all like Yuan dynasty, like one big country. India was after Ashoka, that was all fragmented. Until the British came and put together British Kingdom, the British India. Okay, the capital was at Pataliputra. Can you see Pataliputra? This was established by Ajatasattu's son, and then later on became the capital of Ashoka, and this was the whole area. So this dynasty declined 50 years after Ashoka's rule and gave rise to the Shunga dynasty. Shunga, the first king of Shunga, was against Buddhism, so actually persecuted Buddhist monks, burned monasteries and all that. But his son actually was supportive of Buddhism during the Shunga dynasty. Ashoka the Great Empire, he's the emperor of the Mauryan dynasty, and ruled almost the entire Indian subcontinent for 4 decades. And he was the one who brought up Buddhism out of India. If not for Ashoka, Buddhism would just be in India and after that completely disappeared. Because Buddhism disappeared in India for about 600 to 700 years. It was Ashoka that brought it out, transplanted Buddhism out of India. Some places planted for a while, but unfortunately never blossomed. Some places already took root. Yeah. So after the 12th century, Buddhism declined in India, the land of his birth. Ashoka started off as being bloodthirsty. Actually, his skin also not very good. Doesn't have good skin. And very brilliant. He was very brilliant. Our father had many consorts. So he got many brothers. So when the father died, when the father was dying, he has to race back to the capital. And when the father died, they had to decide who is the emperor. So he hosted a big dinner. All the brothers got in. And then in the middle of the dinner, they closed the windows and doors. And archers came out and started shooting everybody. Killed all of them. So not good to be born in a royal family. Even if you're the eldest, because you might be killed first. So that's how you become king, huh? Same thing also Chinese history, same. This is how they maintain power. Yeah. So he was bloodthirsty, but he was converted to Buddhism at the Battle of Kalinga. Kalinga is one part on the eastern side of India, and there was a really bloody war. Many people died. Hundreds of thousands were taken as slaves, children, women, men. So for the first time, he saw the devastation that he brought, and he had a complete change of heart. So the calling of Dhamma arose in his heart. And apparently, the one who converted him was a young monk, 9 years old, Arahan. That was his nephew. One of his brothers had a wife who was pregnant, and the god allowed her to escape. And she gave birth to a son who later on became the monk that converted the uncle. When the uncle invited the monk, because he was so troubled and this monk looked so peaceful, he was 9 years old, invited him into the throne room, that monk went straight and sat on the throne. So Ashoka was shocked. But that's to symbolize that, the enthronement of the Dhamma. And Ashoka was very fervent after that. He became a very strong Buddhist practitioner. He had a great remorse. He even wrote this on his rock edict. He says His Majesty felt remorse on account of the conquest of Kalinga, because during the subjugation of a previously unconquered country, slaughter, death, and taking away captives of people naturally occurs, where His Majesty feels profound sorrow and regret. He even wrote this down on his pillars to see how regretful, how remorseful he was. And so, after he became a Buddhist, he ruled the country half a century of peace and security, and never before in India. This was really the golden age, because there was social harmony, religious transformation, expansion of sciences and knowledges, hospitals for animals during that time, right? Not only hospitals for human beings, and they grow trees, because India is sometimes very hot in summer, trees for travelers, wells, and a lot of wonderful things that he did. And he also did pilgrimage. And because of his pilgrimage, he built stupas and pillars. That's how we were able to identify the holy places. Otherwise, nobody knows where they are. So Ashoka was the one who planted, and he started spreading stupas, 84,000 stupas. This means that he built many stupas, and he got Buddhist relics and put in each of these stupas. He sponsored the Third Buddhist Council at Pataliputra, where Theravada or Stavira Vada's monastic prevailed. So he was very supportive to the Theravada tradition. So the Buddhism that we received from Sri Lanka and Thailand actually came from this Ashoka, right? From this council. His teacher was called Mogali Putatissa. Putta means son. The son of Mogali. The name of this monk was Tissa. You can call him Tissa or Mogali Putta, the son of Mogali. Yeah? He convened 1,000 monks, and then they refuted all the controversies, and they put together the Kathavata, or points of controversy, that becomes the 7th book in the Abhidhamma. He was known as the universal monarch, or Chakravarti. You look at his empire, how huge the empire was. And he rules by the Dhamma, social justice, being very generous to his subjects, religious tolerance, and also guided by what you call the 10 royal virtues of good governance. The Buddha has given 10 principles of what we mean by a good governance, and Ashoka followed it very closely. So Ashoka model became the influence the kingdoms in Southeast Asia. They are also inspired by Ashoka centuries later. And he sent missionaries from India outside, even to the Greeks, which is called the Yavanas. Buddhism went to Greece actually, and also influenced Greek philosophy, great philosophers. And missionaries to Kashmir, to Gandhara, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Mysore, northern Gujarat, Sindh, Maharashtra, Greece, Himalayan regions, southern Myanmar, central Thailand, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka, it took root. Myanmar, it took root. Gandhara in Pakistan became the growth area for Mahayana Buddhism. The flowering of Mahayana was actually in Central Asia, right? Pakistan. So we are quite interested to check out in Pakistan some remnants of the greatness of the Buddhist civilization. And at that time there were Greeks in Bactria, now part of Afghanistan and Pakistan. So the Greeks got very attracted to Buddhism. And one Greek king by the name of Melinda had a question with a monk called Nagasena, 2nd century. And his questions are being put into, he raised questions and Nagasena was able to explain very well. And this is called the questions of King Melinda. This is part of the Pali scriptures, Pali Pitaka, Greek king. So he sent his son Mahinda and his daughter Sangamita to establish Buddhism in Sri Lanka by converting the king Tissa. And in Sri Lanka, it's still a living tradition, Buddhist tradition. And apparently, the Buddhist monks have also gone to Egypt. And the order is called Theraputtae in Alexandria, which was the capital of Egypt. And some people believe that this is where, when Jesus was a young boy, when they went into exile, he got into touch with some Buddhist monks. And so therefore, and then he went over to explore Buddhism and the yogic tradition. So that's why when you check the teachings of Jesus, sometimes his parables are also similar to the Buddhist parables. They were similar Buddhist parables. And some of his quotations, it might be a bit strange, for the Jewish tradition, but they're more aligned to Buddhist teachings. Yeah. And there is a book comparing the Bible with Buddhist teachings. A lot of similarities. So this is where it is believed that Jesus got into touch with Buddhism. This is hypothesis. I'm not saying that this has been proven. Yeah. So Ashoka being so ambitious and he so generous, giving so much dana that his treasury almost emptied. I do not know. He's very, very zealous. During his time, after he passed away, Buddhism actually, his empire actually collapsed. So Buddhism disappeared later in India, spread overseas. So thanks to Ashoka, Buddhism has become a world religion. And he's given so much to the Sangha, so much personal welfare, that even his ministry has to lock up the treasury so he cannot put his hands in treasury to give us some more dana. Ashoka. So after his death, the Mauryan Empire collapsed and Buddhism underwent persecution. And Pushyamitra Shunga. That was the Shunga dynasty. Yeah? Sometimes you have this action and reaction. However, even during this period, there was a group of Buddhist sculptures in Sanchi. Some of us went to the stupa at Sanchi, Amaravati, Bodh Gaya, and other places, the stupas. They was during the Shunga period. All right, there's Ashoka, that's India. Now let us move northwards to another great king that is not mentioned in Tibet in our Theravada tradition, because he was very influential in the growth of Mahayana. It's called Kanishka the Great. Very interestingly, Kanishka came from China. His people came from China. They're called the Yuachi. They've been chased out of China by the Xiongnu. Those who go for Silk Road will know this. And then they landed in Central Asia, went to Central Asia, and then later on pushed down to Bactria. Right? And that is where the dynasty, Kushan dynasty, started. Kanishka was around the 1st to 2nd century after Christ. And he was the 3rd king of the Kushan dynasty. This dynasty was established by Central Asian horsemen that invaded India in the 1st century CE. And they are believed to have come from the Yuachi group, pushed out of the Hersey corridor in China by the Xiongnu tribes. So the folks, but they don't look Chinese, they could be like, some people in China during that time, they look more Caucasian, more Aryan, Indo-Aryan kind of look. Not necessarily looking like us. So they were forced into Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, then moved down to India, 1st century. All right. So this is the Kushan Empire, huge empire. This was the empire that controlled the Silk Road, between the Mediterranean, between Persia, and within China. So luxury goods like ivory, jade, gold, spices, silk was exchanged between East and West. And the Kanishka Empire covered India, Kashmir, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, including southern Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. And its capital was at Purushapura. In today's the capital, it is called Peshawar, Pakistan, Peshawar. But this was the capital. Old capital was the Purushapura in Gandhara. Yeah, and in winter they will have the capital at Mathura, that is in northern India. So you can see it's a huge capital. Later on, they extended his empire into the Tarim Basin, across the mountains into Xinjiang. So his empire also extended in Xinjiang. So that is when Buddhism went over the mountains into China. How about the temperament of Kanishka? This is the picture, the coins. Kanishka was described as being aggressive, hot-tempered, rigid, strict, and harsh king before he converted to Buddhism. But after conversion, he became open-hearted, benevolent, and faithful ruler. What a big change. And during his period, exceptional prosperity for India, following a long period of invasions and war. And what is his contribution? He was converted to Buddhism by his teacher. This is called Ashvaghosha. Ashvaghosha wrote beautiful poetry in Sanskrit. He's a renowned Buddhist scholar, poet, philosopher, and also musician. He's a man of multi-talent, right? And Ashvaghosha converted the king. Ashvaghosha. And this king, Kanishka, conquered many cities around the Tarim Basin, that is present-day Xinjiang, around the Taklamakan Desert. And so it was played an important part in the development of the Silk Road. And Buddhism traveled along the Silk Road into China. So traveled around the Karakoram Range, Central Asia into China. And he also built a huge stupa of 635 feet tall in Peshawar. But now stupa also, you go to Peshawar, I don't think you can see the stupa. Maybe there's some remnants left. He held the 4th Buddhist Council. He was tolerant of other beliefs, but he favored Buddhism. So he was the patron of the 4th Buddhist Council at Harwan Monastery near Srinagar in Kashmir, in order to reconcile doctrinal differences, because there were many teachers, so they have to align. Down here, this is 499 Savasi Vadin monks Some other source I saw was 1,000 monks. So I'm not quite sure. Yeah. They were also supporters of Mahayana Buddhism who compiled a new canon, codified the doctrines of their school, and also a huge commentary called Mahavibhamsa. So these monks are all very, very learned. Pakistan monks are very, very learned. And they came up with treatises, huge volumes in on meditation. Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. That was for work in Pakistan. And Xuanzang went to India because of this Shastra. Right? So Mahayana form of Buddhism was just developing at this time and enjoyed a period of growth with his official support. And his teacher Ashvaghosha wrote what you call Buddha Charita. Is an epic poem in Sanskrit on the life of the Buddha. Only the 14th to the 28th cantos were complete. The earlier cantos were disappeared. So it is a good thing that Buddhism, before it disappeared from India and Pakistan, it was being translated into Tibetan and into Chinese. So a lot of the Sanskrit scriptures are completely gone, lost. So now you've got to go back to Chinese records and Tibetan records in order to know what the sutras were, Sanskrit sutras. Okay. The teacher Shankarashita wrote a massive Yogacara Bhumi Shastra. So it was during this period also the Yogacara, yoga, of course, my meditation, the way of meditation, the Bhumi Shastra. Yeah. These are new meditation schools in Kashmir and Central Asia. So this was very important sites for meditation. So Sanchang went to India just to to learn about the Yogacara Bhumi Shastra in its original form. During this period also, he had a patron of art and learning, and there was a cultural renaissance, because remember there were the Greeks there. And for 500 years, the Buddha does not have a face. The Buddha is represented by symbols. But the Greeks likes to look at the Buddha in human form. So they influenced the sculpture of the Buddha. So the face sculptures of the Buddha looks Grecian, because they were actually done by Greeks or people who learned from the Greeks how to sculpture. So the Buddha was very good looking. It's Greek. They used the statue of Apollo as a model. Look at the robes, The Greeks are very good in carving robes. Looks so real. And the Buddha has a little mustache also. Mustache disappear when it goes to all countries. And the works of architecture, art and sculpture found in Mathura, Peshawar, Takshila, Amaravati, all influence. And so the school of art, Gandhara and Mathura schools, was developed during Kanishka time. And so you could say this was the first Buddha statues that we have, 500 years after the Buddha passed away, during Kanishka's time. That's why you call Gandhara Buddha statues. And during the Kushan Empire, Buddhist monks from Gandhara played a role in the development and transmission of Buddhist ideas to China in the middle of the 2nd century. So that our ancestors who came from China, if you trace back, their teachers come from Central Asia. There was a Kushan monk, but then Lokak Shema. He was a translator of Mahayana Buddhist scriptures into Chinese at a capital city called Loyang. At that time, the empire's capital was Loyang. And he traveled all the way from the Kushan Lokak Shema. He had Chinese disciples, and they translated from Sanskrit into Chinese. And Central Asian and Eastern Asian monks maintained strong cultural exchanges for centuries that followed. Lokak Shema, okay, this is a little bit on him. He was the first known translator of Mahayana religious texts into Chinese. Arrived at Loyang, the capital for the Han dynasty, and he's supposed to be from the Yuetri group, same ethnicity as Kanishka. Ancestors came from China. And these Yuetri covered Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, so they are now integrated with the people. He had knowledge of many languages, including Gandhari Prakrit, that is used in the northwestern part of India. So he's also like a linguist, Lokak Shema. Another one is called Anshikam. Anshika is actually an Iranian. Old part of Iran is called Parthia. And he was known as the earliest known translator of Indian Sanskrit Buddhist texts into Chinese. So Iranian monk, interesting, huh? Monk from Iran came to China, translated Sanskrit into Chinese. He was born as a prince in the Persian Empire. China, they call Ansi, that is for Persia. Or Iran, they call Ansi. Ansi, that's why his name is Anshikao. Yeah, so he's from Persia. He didn't want to become a king, so he passed the throne to his uncle and he became a monk. He traveled to China around 148 CE, set up a major translation center in Luoyang, translated texts on meditation, mindfulness, basic doctrines, and affiliated with the early Buddhist school called Savasivada, which is flourishing in northwestern part of India. He is often referred to as Bodhisattva, so we're not sure if he's early Buddhism or he Mahayana. Mahayana call him Bodhisattva, but he's translated the early Buddhist texts. So Anshika, Lokakshema, Dhammaraksha, these are some Central Asian monks. There was a list of them who propagate Buddhism in East Asia. So some of our early teachers come from Central Asia, from Pakistan, from Persia, Iran, from Afghanistan. Interesting. And they get their teachings from India. Very interesting. Yeah. So the death of Kanishka, there are no available information about his death. He's actually known as a big promoter of Buddhism. That's how we remember Kanishka. There's a relic casket bearing the inscription of Kanishka found in the 20th century. And this is now in the museum at Peshawar. So when you go to Peshawar, see whether we can see this casket. And the effects of his rules are found in the cultural and religious history of India, China, and Central Asia. And Mahayana Buddhism spread with his support for the religion. So King Kanishka. Right, so those are the 4 Kaizen kings of Buddhism. All right, so if there are any questions, I think we are also like, if not, yeah. Quite interesting, huh? You never see this perspective before. So you can see how everything gets integrated. Yeah. How India is linked up to Central Asia, to China, to Korea, to Japan, because Korea and Japan gets Buddhism from China. China gets it from Central Asia. Central Asia gets it from India. Goes in a circle.
Thank you, Datuk Sri, for the very informative talk. Anybody has any questions, please raise your hands. I pass you the mic.
Datuk Sri, maybe the next talk you can talk about what happened to Buddhism in India and disappear.
Okay, I need to do some research. It's quite interesting. Interesting topic, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I'm Wendy. Want to know, Zen Buddhism is actually Zen, isn't it?
Yeah.
Chang.
Yes.
So it actually come from Xuanzang, isn't it?
No.
No? Because he translated, he brought back the Heart Sutra and all that.
No. Of course, Xuanzang plays an important role in the development of Buddhism, because you see, these teachers are from Central Asia. They don't really speak Chinese. They will speak in their language, and the students will listen to it and then write it in Chinese. So, for instance, Lokakshema could not find Chinese terms for all these Indian concepts. So they do a literal kind of, sort of like from a bodhi become poti, So they use Chinese syllables in order to, Nibbana become Nyapan, right? So Xuanzang was not happy with the translations in China because they were not precise. And Xuanzang is a man of precision. So he went all the way to China to bring back the scriptures because he wants to do the translations himself. He has an establishment translation bureau, many stages of translation in order to check its accuracy and the usage of the language, and then go back to him again in order to final touch. So his translation was extremely very good. So Zen came from Bodhidharma. Bodhidharma came from India. He made his way into China and spent time in meditation. And at that time, this was like southern part of China. And then he actually introduced Buddhism to the Chinese. But at that time, they were also influenced by Taoist ideas. Somehow the Lao Tzu and the Buddha came at about the same time. And Lao Tzu is like going along with the flow and very, very, very important concepts. And somehow it seems to be able to kind of match Buddhism. So Zen Buddhism seems to be like a combination. It actually has influence of the Taoist tradition plus Buddhism. So this becomes almost like a Chinese version of Buddhism, Zen. Because Indian Buddhism tends to be very, very complicated. Because some of the Indian schools that went to China, they were only for learned people. They were very difficult. The Zen is a revolt against that. But they go for really like simplicity and direct to the point. And this is very much influenced by Taoism. So Taoist has actually borrowed terms and ideas from Buddhism, just as Buddhism has made use of some terms from Taoism. There was almost this amalgamation. Yeah. So Zen Buddhism developed in southern part of China. Yeah. And Xuanzang he established an Indian school, the Yogacara school. So he was very learned, and so he's not actually linked up to Zen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. If you were to look at Buddhism, the way it's practiced across different parts, it tends to take a bit of a slightly different form as it kind of goes across. So whether it's vegetarianism or various other aspects have kind of changed across the various parts. So is that something that was because of the doctrine of Buddhism, or the way it kind of spread, that it kind of took on some local aspect?
Yeah, because I think that's the nature of Buddhism. Buddhism is just, the Buddha teaches the path for liberation. And the practice goes, is anchored on the Four Noble Truths, Eightfold Path and all that. Some other things are really cultural. So Buddhism is quite flexible. So when it goes to different land, it is introduced to a manner that the people find it very acceptable. So when it goes to China, it begins to take a Chinese form. And that's how the Chinese was able to accept something that's completely foreign. Buddhism, it comes from India. It's completely non-Chinese. And thinking of the Chinese and the Indians are completely different in some aspects, right? Some terms and concepts that is found in Buddhism, which is Indian, you don't have an equivalent in China, so they have to invent, they have to try to see how it goes. But eventually Buddhism is so integrated with China that it is now like part of Chinese culture. So it is that flexibility. And also recently we've just come back from Tibet. So when Buddhism was first introduced to Tibet, the king wanted the Indian form by getting Santa Rakshita. He was a professor in Nalanda University, and he could not reach out to the Tibetans because they had this practice of the born practices. So then you have the Guru Rinpoche, right? Brought from Pakistan. And when he went over to Tibet, he looked at the born practices and he mastered the tantric practices. He's able to introduce Buddhism that's acceptable to the Tibetans. So that's why you find that the Tibetans' version of Buddhism doesn't seem to coincide. It seems to be quite far away from Sri Lankan practice. But if you look at the basics of Buddhism, the principles are the same. Yeah? It is flexible enough to accept, to adapt to local conditions. So easy for you to practice. That is the nature of Buddhism. It doesn't try to go and ask you to change everything in order to conform to the, what do you call it, to a fixed characteristic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Datuk Sri. I just have a questions about King Bibisara and the son Ajatasattu.
Yeah.
I mean, King Bibisara has been such a devoted Buddhist.
Yeah.
So I wonder if the son was also raised under such background. And if he is such a devoted Buddhist, right, Ajatasattu, is it because the law of karma is so strong that King Bibisara could not escape his faith, you know?
King Bibisara actually knew what was coming, because when Ajatasattu was about to be born, he was already predicted that he's going to kill him. That's why his name is Ajatasattu, the enemy unborn. Already his name is an enemy. So Bimbisara later on became a follower of the Buddha, but I believe at that time Ajatasattu was more under the influence of the Devadatta. See, he was not a follower of the Buddha. Later on, after he has killed his father, and he was afraid that people might kill him, because if you have killed your father, you're always very insecure. So one day when the Buddha was in Rajagaha at the mango grove, not the bamboo grove, and he was being brought to see the Buddha, and they have to walk through the forest, and it was so quiet. It was full moon, it was so quiet. And as he walked halfway, began to lose confidence. He turned to his sisters, he said, "Hey, are you sure this is not a trap to kill me?" They said, No, King, please move on. And he said that 3 times. Then eventually he comes to an opening, and the Buddha was seated on a kind of a hill, surrounded by 1,000 monks, all in meditation. And I closed the door. Is the door closed? Okay. So everybody was so quiet, and Ajatasattu was amazed. He says that even in his court as a king, he was not able to make people as quiet as this. And you got about 1,000 monks, all very, very quiet. And the Buddha seated, you can imagine the full moon, Buddha seated down there in meditation, and the monks all seated in meditation. It was so quiet that he couldn't believe. He thought that people were trying to kill him, that it was a trap. Right? Later on, he became a Buddhist. He became a change of heart. He supported the Buddha, and that is why he became the patron for the first Buddhist council.
I mean, just curious, if King Bibisara knew when the son was born that he's going to be like this, why didn't he send the son straight to the Buddha?
No, actually he could have killed the son. He given a few opportunities even to get abortion done. And when Ajatasattu went into his bedroom with the dagger, he could have actually got him killed, but he didn't. He is such a nice king. Such a good-hearted king. 50 years, good-hearted. And the son is ambitious. He knows the son is ambitious, but I do not know how sometimes people think. Position of power. Maybe because even in India, the idea of karma is prevalent. He could think that, well, if it must come to that end, it comes to an end, go along with it. Ajatasattu apparently could have attained the first stage of sainthood after he met the Buddha, but because he committed patricide, it becomes a block for him. He could not attain first stage of sainthood. Actually, after that, he'd be reborn in the hells. Ajatasattu, for killing, patricide. All right, so you have a lot of stories about kings. Okay, so yes, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.